I came to believe that I might have neglected or at least underestimated and misunderstood Pamela's role in Jim's life. I re-interviewed Diane Gardner. Diane had been one of Pam's closest confidants in Los Angeles, and I figured that if anyone knew what happened, or at least what Pam said happened, it was Diane. She said that for several months, Pam walked around talking to herself, rambling and making no sense, and when she did make sense, she blamed herself for Jim's death. I've never seen anyone feeling so guilty, Diane told me. She had tried to devote her whole life to one person. That was it. That was her life. Her whole life was him. And to have that kicked out from under you. As Diane and Pam spent more time together, fragments of the story came together, forming a believable scenario, explaining the source of Pam's guilt. Apparently, Jim and Pam had stopped at one or more sidewalk cafes on the way home from the movie, where Jim consumed several drinks. At home, Jim mixed another drink as Pam lined up some white powder on a tabletop. At this point, Diane is a bit vague. Jim had known about Pam's heroin use, but most agree that apparently he didn't know how frequently she used it. Diane told me that Pam seemed able to use it on a daily basis for a while, then merely stopped, suffering rarely from withdrawal. And, Diane said to her knowledge, Pam never used heroin with Jim or in his presence, at least until now. Jim disapproved of heroin. That was confirmed by everyone I talked to. Danny Sugarman, the 14-year-old high school student who hung out at the Door's office and 10 years later helped me get No One Here published, said Jim actually lectured him on the horrors and evils of heroin. So, Diane told me, when Jim saw Pam bent over a line of white powder, it is possible he thought it was cocaine. Jim liked cocaine. There is no reason to think he would have done anything but smile and join Pam on the couch and inhale the next line of powder. On the other hand, he could have sensed or realized that it was heroin. Diane told me that according to Pam, the talk about Jim's depression was real. His constant drinking only aggravated his depression. There is a theory that his death was a suicide. Diane doesn't dismiss that theory, at least not entirely. She told me that when Jim saw the powder lined up so neatly on the tabletop, he may have known it wasn't cocaine but heroin, and knew the dangers of what lay in its use, especially in combination with alcohol. Danny Sugarman told me a slightly different version of the same story. Danny said, I seem to remember Pam saying something about Jim discovering her heroin. Jim dumped a quantity on the table, deftly pushing it into long, thick lines, probably with the edge of a paper matchbook or a credit card. He inhaled the first line. Apparently, Pam said, Jim, don't do too much. Don't do too much. Instead of saying, Jim, it's smack, because she had been hiding it from him and she knew very well he did not do that. And he did not want her to do it. He saw what heroin did to people. He knew the hazards of it. So, I remember a feeling of guilt from Pam, and an implication that Jim had discovered her stash and Pam said, oh, Jim, it's just coke, which he wasn't really into at that point anyway. And Jim said, let's do some. He put it out and snorted it like it was coke. Danny insisted that he didn't know the true story, because this was only one of many that Pamela told, and the one she told most consistently. The official version of a heart attack in a bathtub is, however, the version he believes.